He didn't know what was about to happen when he left that $100 bill on the table. The diner was nearly empty that Tuesday morning. Just the smell of burnt coffee and yesterday's pie. An old man sat alone in the corner booth, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. You've seen him before. Maybe not this exact man, but someone like him. The kind who orders the same thing every day, who sits in the same spot, who nods politely but never really talks. Sarah watched him from behind the counter. She'd been his waitress for 3 months now. Every morning, same routine. 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee, always left a $5 tip. But today was different. Today, his hand shook a little more than usual. Today, he looked at her longer when she refilled his cup. Today, something in his eyes seemed to be saying goodbye. What makes someone suddenly change everything they've ever done? She didn't know about the letter in his pocket. The one from the doctor. The one with words like aggressive and 3 months and we've done all we can. He didn't know about the photo in her apron. The one of a 7-year-old boy with tubes in his nose. The one she looked at every time she felt like giving up. Sometimes the universe puts 2 broken people in the same room at exactly the right moment. He finished his eggs, folded his napkin precisely, the way he always did. But when he reached for his wallet, something made him pause. He looked at her again. Really looked. Saw the dark circles under her eyes. The way she tried to hide her limp. The forced smile that never quite reached her eyes. And in that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. Sarah almost didn't notice the money at first. She was already halfway to the kitchen when something made her turn back. There it was, tucked under his coffee cup. Not the usual $5 bill. This was different. This was 100. Your first instinct would be to run after him, to tell him he made a mistake. That's what good people do, right? They return money that isn't theirs. But he was already gone. The bell above the door had barely stopped ringing. Through the window, she watched his old Buick pull out of the parking lot, moving slower than usual. Like he was savoring every moment, she picked up the bill with trembling fingers, turned it over. There, written in shaky handwriting on a napkin underneath, "For your boy, don't give up." How did he know? The photo in her apron suddenly felt heavier. Little Tommy's face smiled up at her, frozen in time from before the diagnosis, before the surgeries, before everything fell apart. You think you're good at hiding your pain. You think nobody notices when you're drowning, but sometimes a complete stranger sees right through your armor. Sarah sat down hard in his booth. The vinyl seat was still warm. The coffee cup still held the impression of his lips. And for the first time in months, she let herself cry. Not the silent tears she shed in the hospital bathroom, not the angry sobs she muffled in her pillow at night. These were different tears. These were tears of something she'd almost forgotten existed: hope. She didn't know that 3 blocks away, Harold Morrison was sitting in his car, his own tears falling freely. He didn't know if the money would help. He didn't know if it was enough, but for the first time since his diagnosis, he felt like his life still had meaning. What if your last act of kindness became someone else's first glimpse of light? The $100 should have gone straight to the hospital bill. That's what any rational person would do. Sarah had $47,000 in medical debt, another surgery scheduled in 2 weeks, insurance that covered almost nothing. $100 was a drop in an ocean of red ink, but sometimes the heart makes decisions the mind can't understand. She stood in the grocery store, holding Tommy's favorite cereal, the one she hadn't bought in 6 months, the one that cost $3 more than the generic brand. Her hand shook as she placed it in the cart. You forget what normal feels like when you're in survival mode. For months, every penny had gone to copays and prescriptions. Dinner was whatever the food bank had that week. New shoes could wait. Everything could wait. Everything except keeping her boy alive. But that $100 bill felt different. It wasn't just money, it was permission. Permission to be a mother again, not just a medical case manager. Permission to buy the cereal that made her son smile. She bought the name brand peanut butter too, and fresh strawberries, and the comic book Tommy had been staring at in the hospital gift shop for 3 weeks. Was it irresponsible? Maybe. But when you're drowning, sometimes you need to remember what breathing feels like. That afternoon, she sat by Tommy's hospital bed, watching his eyes light up as he turned the comic book pages. His thin fingers traced the colorful panels. For 30 minutes, he wasn't a sick kid. He was just a boy, lost in a story about heroes. "Mom," he said suddenly, looking up. "Why are you crying?" She hadn't realized she was. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that sometimes kindness from a stranger can break you more than cruelty ever could? "Happy tears, baby," she whispered. Just happy tears. That night, Harold Morrison sat in his empty house, sorting through old photographs. Each one a memory. Each one a life lived. He'd been saving that money for a funeral nobody would attend. But what's the point of a fancy casket when you could help a living child instead? He smiled, remembering the waitress's face. Sometimes the best investment you can make is in someone else's tomorrow. Harold came back the next morning. Same booth, same order. But Sarah's hands trembled as she poured his coffee. How do you thank someone for giving you hope? How do you tell a stranger they've changed your life with a single gesture? "Sir," she started, but he raised his hand gently. "How's your boy?" he asked simply. The words hung in the air between them. She hadn't told him about Tommy, never mentioned the medical bills, never said a word about the sleepless nights or the fear that lived in her chest like a second heartbeat. But somehow, he knew. You think your struggles are invisible. You think you're wearing a mask that hides your pain. But sometimes someone who's been broken themselves can see right through to your fractured heart. He's fighting, she managed. Every day, he fights. Harold nodded slowly. Good. Fighters run in the family, I see. She wanted to return the money, wanted to tell him she couldn't accept it. But the words wouldn't come, because the truth was, she needed it. Not just the money, but what it represented. The reminder that kindness still existed in a world that had shown her so little. "My grandson," Harold said quietly, staring into his coffee. "Lost him 5 years ago, leukemia. He was 8. The diner seemed to shrink around them. Two souls connected by loss, sitting in a booth that had heard 1,000 conversations but none quite like this. "I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered. "Don't be sorry," he said, finally meeting her eyes. "Be strong. Your boy needs you strong." He finished his breakfast in silence, left his usual $5 tip, but as he stood to leave, he paused. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. What if the people who understand our pain the most are the ones who've walked through the same fire? That afternoon, Harold went to the bank, looked at his savings account, the money he'd been hoarding for a future he no longer had. The nurse had said 3 months, the doctor had said maybe less, but his grandson had taught him something in those final weeks. That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and fighting anyway. He made another withdrawal. Word travels fast in a small diner. Maria, the cook, noticed it first. The way Harold and Sarah had developed their own rhythm. Coffee poured without asking, extra butter on the toast without request. A gentle smile that said more than words ever could. But it was the envelope that changed everything. The second Tuesday, Harold left another 100 under his plate. The third Tuesday, 200. By the fourth, Sarah tried to refuse. "I can't," she said, pushing the envelope back across the table. "This is too much." You know that feeling when pride battles with necessity? When accepting help feels like admitting defeat? Harold's weathered hand covered hers. "Do you know what it's like?" he asked softly. "To realize you're running out of time and still have so much love left to give?" The morning rush faded around them. Time seemed to pause, the way it does when truth is being spoken. "My grandson Billy," Harold continued. "He collected bottle caps, said he was going to build a rocket ship out of them. Travel to Mars." I used to laugh, tell him that's not how rockets work. His voice caught. Sarah waited. Last thing he said to me was that he'd send me a postcard from Mars, that he'd find a way. Sarah's tears fell onto the scratched Formica table. "Your boy," Harold said, squeezing her hand. "He's someone's rocket ship, someone's journey to Mars. Let me help him fly." How do you argue with a dying man's last wish? That night, Sarah sat in the hospital chapel. She wasn't religious, not anymore. Too many unanswered prayers. Too many nights bargaining with a God who seemed to have forgotten her zip code. But tonight was different. Tonight she didn't pray for miracles. She prayed for Harold. For the man who'd lost everything and still found room in his heart to help a stranger. If you're listening, she whispered to the empty pews. Please give him peace. Please let him know he's saving us. 2 floors up, Tommy was drawing his latest masterpiece, a rocket ship made of bottle caps heading for a bright red planet. What's that, baby? Sarah asked when she returned to his room. It's for the nice man, Tommy said. The one who makes you smile. Kids see everything even when you think they're not watching. The diagnosis came on a Thursday. Not Harold's. He already knew his fate. This was different. This was the call Sarah had been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. We found a match, Dr. Martinez said over the phone. A kidney donor. The surgery can happen next month. You think good news will feel like relief, like finally being able to breathe. But sometimes it feels like terror, because now you have something to lose again. The surgery would cost $180,000. Insurance would cover some. The hospital had already written off what they could, but she'd still need $30,000 up front. Might as well have been $1 million. She didn't tell Harold. Couldn't bear to. He'd already given so much, but somehow, like always, he knew something had changed. Good news or bad news? He asked that Friday morning, studying her face. Both, she admitted. Ah. He nodded. The complicated kind. Those are usually the important ones. He was thinner now. His clothes hung loose. His hands shook more, but his eyes were clearer than ever. Tell me, he said simply. So she did. Told him about the match, about the surgery, about the hope and the fear and the impossible number that stood between her son and a normal life. Harold listened, sipped his coffee, said nothing for so long she wondered if he'd dozed off. Then, 30,000? She nodded, ashamed to even say it out loud. When? 4 weeks. They need it in 4 weeks or we lose our spot. What would you do if you had 4 weeks to save your child's life? Harold left his usual tip that morning. No envelope, no extra bills, just the $5 they'd started with. Sarah's heart sank, though she tried not to show it. Of course he couldn't help with this. She was asking for the impossible. She'd already taken too much, but as she cleared his table, she found a note. Don't give up. Monday. Trust me. All weekend, she wondered what Monday would bring. Harold had never come on a Monday before. Their routine was Tuesday through Friday, 4 days a week. 4 conversations that had become the scaffolding holding her life together. Sunday night she couldn't sleep. Tommy asked her to tell him a story. She told him about rocket ships and Mars and an old man who left hope under coffee cups. Is he an angel? Tommy asked, his eyes heavy with medication. I don't know, baby, she whispered. Maybe. What if angels look like ordinary people who've learned that love is the only thing you can take with you? Monday came with rain, the kind that turns the world gray and makes everything feel heavier than it should. Sarah kept checking the door. Every time the bell rang, her heart jumped. He came at 10:17, not his usual 7:30, not alone. The man with him wore a suit, carried a briefcase, looked like the kind of person who had never eaten at a diner in his life. Sarah, Harold said, his voice formal in a way she'd never heard. This is my attorney, James Mitchell. Your mind does funny things when it's trying to process the impossible. The attorney opened his briefcase, pulled out papers, official-looking documents with numbers that didn't make sense. Mr. Morrison has asked me to facilitate a gift, the attorney said. He's liquidating part of his estate. I don't understand, Sarah stammered. Harold's smile was tired but warm. My house, he said simply. I'm selling my house. The diner spun. Maria dropped a plate in the kitchen. Someone's phone rang. Life continued around them while Sarah's world tilted off its axis. No, she said. No, you can't. It's done, Harold interrupted gently. Closed Friday. Cash sale. After taxes and fees, it comes to $37,000. How do you refuse a gift that comes at such a price? Where will you live? She whispered. Harold's eyes twinkled. Got a nice room at Sunset Manor. 3 meals a day. Bingo on Wednesdays. Even has a pretty nurse who laughs at my jokes. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Sunset Manor was the budget nursing home on the east side, the kind of place people went when they had nowhere else to go. Besides, he continued, what's an old man need with 4 bedrooms and memories that echo? The attorney pushed the check across the table. Made out to the hospital. Memo line. For Tommy's tomorrow. Sarah's hands shook so badly she couldn't hold it. "This is my grandson's rocket ship," Harold said quietly. "The one I should have helped him build. Let me do this, please." Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to give. That afternoon, Harold moved into Sunset Manor with 2 suitcases and a photo album. The room was small. The walls were thin. The food was nothing like the diners. But that night, for the first time in 5 years, he slept without ghosts. The surgery was scheduled for November 15th. 3 weeks away. 3 weeks of preparation. 3 weeks of Harold getting thinner while Tommy got stronger. You never realize how connected we all are until one person's sacrifice becomes another's salvation. Sarah tried to visit Harold at Sunset Manor. The first time he refused to see her. The second time he was at a doctor's appointment. The third time she found him in the common room, teaching another resident to play chess. "You're stubborn," she said, sitting down across from him. "Pot, meat kettle," he replied, moving a pawn. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that exists between people who've shared something profound. "Tommy made you something," she said finally, pulling out a rolled-up paper. Harold's hands trembled as he unrolled it. A drawing. A rocket ship made of bottle caps, soaring past stars toward a red planet. At the bottom, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, "Thank you for helping me fly. Love, Tommy." The chess pieces blurred. Harold traced the drawing with one weathered finger. "May I keep this?" he asked. "He made it for you." What if the most valuable things we own are the ones that cost nothing but mean everything? That evening, Harold taped the drawing to his wall, right next to the photo of Billy, 2 boys, 2 rocket ships. One old man learning that love doesn't divide when you share it, it multiplies. Sarah worked extra shifts, other waitresses covered when she couldn't. Maria sent food home. The dishwasher, Miguel, fixed her car for free when it broke down. "Why?" she asked him. "Because Harold's a good man," Miguel said simply, "and good men make us all want to be better." The diner had become something more than a restaurant. It had become a family. The kind you choose. The kind that shows up. 3 weeks. 21 days. 504 hours. Harold marked each one on a calendar. Not counting down to Tommy's surgery. Counting down to something else. Something he hadn't told anyone. The doctors had revised their estimate. 3 months had become 6 weeks. 6 weeks had become any day now. But he had to last until November 15th. Had to see this through. Just a little longer, he whispered to the photo of Billy each night. Just need to see one more rocket launch. November 15th came with the first snow of winter. Soft flakes that made the world look clean and new. Sarah stood at the hospital window watching them fall, while nurses prepared Tommy for surgery. "You scared, Mom?" Tommy asked, looking small in his hospital gown. "You want to lie to your children? Want to tell them everything will be fine?" But sometimes honesty is its own kind of love. "Terrified," she admitted. "Me too," he said. Then, softer, "Will the rocket ship man be here?" She'd told Harold the surgery time, left messages at Sunset Manor. But he hadn't responded. She understood. Some things are too hard to witness, even from a distance. "I don't know, baby." The anesthesiologist arrived. Forms were signed. Prayers were whispered. And then they wheeled her boy away and Sarah was alone with her fear. The waiting room was a purgatory of fluorescent lights and old magazines. Other families sat in their own bubbles of worry. Time moved like molasses. An hour passed, then 2. At hour 3, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Harold. He looked like death warmed over, pale, gaunt, moving with the careful steps of someone holding themselves together by will alone. But he was there. "Didn't want you to be alone," he said simply, lowering himself into the chair beside her. "How do you thank someone for showing up when showing up costs them everything?" They sat in silence. Harold's breathing was labored. Every few minutes he'd close his eyes and she'd wonder if this was it. If he'd spent his last energy getting here. "Tell me about him," Harold said suddenly. "Tell me about Tommy. Not the sick parts, the boy parts." So she did. Told him about Tommy's obsession with dinosaurs, his inability to eat a sandwich without deconstructing it first, the way he sang in the shower, badly and loudly, The jokes that made no sense but made her laugh anyway. Harold smiled at each story, added his own about Billy, two boys who would never meet but were forever connected by an old man's love. Hour 4. Hour 5. Mrs. Mitchell? A surgeon in scrubs, mask pulled down, eyes tired but bright. Sarah couldn't breathe. Harold's hand found hers. The transplant was successful, the doctor said. He did beautifully. You can see him in recovery in about an hour. The waiting room erupted. Not from Sarah. She couldn't make a sound. But from Harold. A whoop of joy that turned into a cough that turned into something worse. Harold? He was sliding from his chair. She caught him, eased him to the floor. His lips were blue, his breathing shallow. Code Blue, waiting room 3, someone shouted. Medical staff swarmed. Sarah was pushed back. She could only watch as they worked on the man who'd saved her son. Please, she whispered. Please, not now. Not like this. Harold woke up 3 doors down from Tommy. The same ICU, the same monitors, the same artificial light that made everything feel like a dream. Well, he said when he saw Sarah's face, this is inconvenient. You laugh at the worst times sometimes. When crying would break you completely. The doctor says you're stable, she said. But Harold, I know, he interrupted. Been knowing for a while now, just needed to make it to today. She wanted to argue, wanted to rage against the unfairness of it all. But what was the point? He'd made his choice, traded his comfort for Tommy's future. Can I tell you something? Harold asked. About Billy? She nodded. Last week he was alive. He asked me if I believed in heaven. I told him, of course, that it was a beautiful place where no one was sick and everyone was happy. Harold's eyes fixed on something beyond the hospital ceiling. He thought about that for a minute. Then he asked if they had pizza in heaven. I said the best pizza. And video games? All the video games. And dogs? So many dogs. Sarah smiled through her tears. Then he said something I'll never forget. He said, Grandpa, if heaven has all that, why are you so sad I'm going there? The monitors beeped. Somewhere, a phone rang. Life and death coexisted in the space between heartbeats. I didn't have an answer then, Harold continued, but I do now. We're sad because love makes us selfish. We want to keep the people we love close, even when letting them go is the kindest thing we can do. Harold, I'm not sad, Sarah. For the first time in 5 years, I'm not sad. I got to see another boy get his chance. Got to be part of something good again. That's not a tragedy. That's a gift. What if the measure of a life isn't how long it lasts, but how much love it leaves behind? That evening, as the snow continued to fall, Harold asked for one thing. To see Tommy just once. Just to know it was real. They wheeled him down the hall. 2 patients. One old, one young, both fighting different battles. Tommy was still groggy, but he smiled when he saw Harold. Hey, Rocket Man, he whispered. Hey, astronaut, Harold whispered back. They looked at each other. The boy who would live and the man who was dying. And in that moment, everything made sense. Thank you, Tommy said. No, Harold replied. Thank you. Harold died on November 18th at 3:47 in the morning. The nurses said he went peacefully, just closed his eyes and let go. On his bedside table, Tommy's drawing and a photo of Billy. Sarah was there. Had been there every night, splitting her time between 2 rooms, 2 people she couldn't bear to leave. You think you'll know what to say when someone dies, that the right words will come, but death makes poets of none of us. I'm here, she whispered, holding his hand as his breathing slowed. You're not alone. His eyes opened one last time, focused on something she couldn't see. His lips moved. Postcard, he breathed, from Mars. And then he was gone. The funeral was supposed to be small. Harold had no family left, few friends. He'd told her once he'd probably leave this world the way he'd lived in it lately, quietly, without fuss. He was wrong. The diner closed for the morning. Every regular came, every waitress, every cook. Miguel, the dishwasher, wore his only suit. Maria made food for the reception, but it wasn't just them. Nurses from the hospital, the attorney who'd handled the house sale, the man who'd bought Harold's house and learned why he was selling, the residents from Sunset Manor, even Dr. Martinez, who'd performed Tommy's surgery. They filled the small chapel, spilled into the hallway, stood in the cold because there wasn't room inside. How do you measure a life? By the money in the bank? the years on the calendar, or by the lives you touch when you decide that love is worth more than anything you could ever own. Tommy couldn't come, still too weak. But he'd made another drawing. This one showed 2 rocket ships flying side by side toward a bright red planet, one piloted by a boy with glasses, one by an old man with kind eyes. Sarah stood at the podium, the drawing in her shaking hands. "Harold Morrison saved my son's life," she began. "But more than that, he saved mine. He showed me that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have coffee-stained shirts and stories about grandchildren and hearts so big they can't help but give everything away." The chapel was silent, except for muffled sobs. "He asked me once if I knew what it was like to have so much love left to give and nowhere to put it. I didn't understand then. I do now." She looked out at the faces, all these people touched by one man's kindness. Harold found somewhere to put his love. He put it in every tip that was too big, every smile at someone who was struggling. Every moment he chose to see pain in others and do something about it. He put it in my son, and now my son will carry that love forward. Every birthday Harold made possible, every graduation, every moment of a life that almost wasn't. That's immortality, real immortality. Love passed from one person to another, rippling outward, never ending. 6 months later, spring had come to the diner, new flowers in the window boxes, fresh paint on the walls, and in the corner booth a small plaque, "Harold's Table, where kindness lives." Sarah still worked the morning shift, still poured coffee for strangers who might be angels in disguise. But everything was different now. Tommy was there, doing homework at the counter, healthy, alive, arguing with Maria about whether dinosaurs could have built rocket ships. "Of course they couldn't," Maria said, ruffling his hair. "Their arms were too short." "That's discrimination," Tommy declared, making everyone laugh. "You forget what normal feels like until you have it again." The bell above the door chimed. An elderly woman entered, moving slowly, counting change in her palm. She ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, coffee and dry toast. Sarah watched her, saw the carefully mended coat, the shoes held together with duct tape, the way she savored each sip like it might be her last. What would Harold do? When the woman asked for the check, Sarah shook her head. "Already paid for," she said, "by a friend." "I don't understand. I don't know anyone here." Sarah smiled, feeling Harold's presence like warm sunshine. "That's the thing about kindness, it doesn't need introductions." She refilled the woman's coffee, brought her eggs and bacon and hash browns, watched tears fall onto the scratched Formica table. "Why?" the woman whispered. "Because someone did it for me once, and now it's my turn. That's how love works. That's how Harold's love works. It doesn't end when someone dies, it multiplies, it spreads, it finds new hearts to fill and new lives to change." Tommy looked up from his homework, caught Sarah's eye, smiled his grandfather Billy's smile, his hero Harold's smile. "Mom," he called out, "can I use my allowance to buy her pie?" And there it was. The ripple, the wave, the love that never ends. Harold Morrison had been right about heaven. It wasn't a place you go. It's a thing you leave behind. In every act of kindness, in every moment you choose love over fear, generosity over greed, connection over isolation. He never made it to Mars, but he helped 2 boys build rocket ships. One made of bottle caps and dreams that ended too soon. One made of second chances and tomorrows that almost weren't, both heading for the stars. What will you do today that will outlive tomorrow? What small act of kindness will ripple outward, touching lives you'll never meet, healing hearts you'll never know? Harold's table sits empty now, but his lesson remains. We're all just travelers in this cosmic diner, passing through, pouring coffee for each other's souls. The tip you leave might be the hope someone needs. The smile you share might be the light in someone's darkness. Don't wait for your diagnosis. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait at all. Love now, give now. Be someone's Harold now, because the truth is we're all running out of time. Every one of us. The only difference is some of us know it. And the ones who know it, they're the ones who change the world, $100 bill at a time. Like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. This channel is for those who believe in the power of small acts to change lives.